Hello and welcome to this week's Etch Play Weekly Live Show. I'm Dan. You will see I'm joined by some extra special guests this week. So we've got a bit of a change of order. So when we have guests on, we like to start with a bit of a discussion. And this week I'm joined by Luke from UKIE. I've just realised how hard that is to say. UKIE Luke. Welcome, Luke. And we've also got Mark from University of Sheffield. And they have been working extremely hard recently on the UKIE Games Industry Census. So let's just dive straight in. I'm going to ask you. I didn't really prep you both on how we're going to structure who answers this. So I'm going to leave it to you to fight it out. So first of all, let's just start. Why do we need a Games Industry Census? Luke, I'll let you lead.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. Well, hello, everyone. So I work at UKIE, the trade association for video games. So it's our job to kind of help support the games industry, and we do lots of things like sort of talk to Parliament and deal with the creative industries and help businesses network and so on. But one of the other things we're trying to do is increase the amount of research and data there is about the games industry, and so the census is one of many things that we do to improve the data we have. Census is so far we're just starting the second ever games industry census. The first one released back in February 2020. And it really was a sort of landmark report about the diversity of the workforce for the games industry. There's about 30,000 people that work in the games industry in the UK, and previously to that, sort of very little really was known about the ins and outs of who all those people are. There've been a couple of sort of smaller reports about maybe looking at things like the number of women in the games industry, that kind of thing. But we started a census that delves into a kind of a really broad range of topics about those people. So it's not just your sort of your standard sort of diversity characteristics of gender, ethnicity, bit of LGBT stuff. We go into all kinds of different questions about whether people have caring responsibilities, their socioeconomic backgrounds, their mental health, all this kind of stuff. So it gives two sort of key benefits, I would think. One is that it gives us all an insight as to who works in the sector, and then the games businesses that obviously here have some understanding of how they're comparing to the general workforce and how in their efforts to improve inclusivity and so forth. But also it tells us all about who the people are in the sector, and it's highlighted a lot of things we didn't expect. It's reinforced some things we did, but it really gives different areas of focus, so we can see where we're doing well in comparatively in some demographic areas, but also where things are more difficult, and I think where we can target our efforts in improving diversity within our sector.
Excellent. And Mark, I didn't give you a very good introduction, so feel free to say a little bit about yourself and your role. But you were involved in the previous census that Luke just mentioned in 2020. If you can say a little bit about your involvement in this, and also perhaps how this census has evolved for this time around compared to the last time that we did it. Is Mark still here?
That is a good question, isn't it?
I think
either that, or he's taking his time to think about the answer.
Oh yeah, he's completely frozen. So Luke, let's go to you again.
Okay.
I think I might have just rejoined on my phone.
Ah, excellent. Well, we can hear you now, Mark.
Well, that's a start. Let's give this a go. This is the glamour of attempting to rejoin from university Wi-Fi during Freshers Week.
Excellent stuff. So, Mark, did you get any of my question?
So I got the original question, which was about why it's important to do a games industry census. But I suspect you might have asked another one.
Yeah. So I said, can you introduce yourself, your role, how you're involved in this? You were also involved in the previous census that Luke just told us about. So how has this census evolved from the last time that you did this?
Sure. So my name is Mark. I work at the University of Sheffield, where I'm a senior lecturer. And I am somebody who's interested in what you might call diversity around culture and creative work. So in the last couple of years, I've been working on questions including areas including TV and film, museums, galleries, libraries, visual, performing arts, all of that kind of thing. And so I got involved in working with UKIE and working with the games industry more generally to try to understand diversity within games, partly because games is actually quite hard to measure compared to some other sectors. Different organizations classify themselves in quite different ways. There's a number of people working for very small organizations. And so the way that we can try to understand games is a little bit different from what we might do if we were trying to understand another sector. And so the way that the census has evolved relative to the version where we asked people questions in 2019 and then we published in 2020. So I'm hoping that at least a couple of people who might be watching this might have already done the survey and so will know the answers to this already. But there's a couple of things to say. The first one is that we've refined some of the areas. We've gone into a little bit more detail about some of the questions that we asked. So in 2019, we just asked a simple question, which was, where do you mainly work? Are you mainly at home? Are you mainly in the office or somewhere in the middle? And obviously, in the last 2 years, the things underlying people's answers to that will have changed quite a lot. And so we're interested in things like, what were you doing before? What were you doing now? What kinds of things might you like to do in the future? The other thing that we've done is, so when we originally designed the survey, one of the things that I was really keen to ensure was that we weren't taking up too much of people's time. We've all gone through the experience where, you get an email, you get asked to fill out some questions, 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, you get like a progress bar and you're at 40%. And you think, I'm probably going to sack this off. We were really keen to make sure that we weren't taking up too much of people's time. But we found last time round that people were finishing it in an average of 4 minutes, which is great. And we were really, really happy with that. But that made us think that there might be scope for asking a couple more questions about people's experiences, what their experience has been like, where they work, and how they feel about the UK games industry more generally. So these questions are optional. There's a bit partway through where we say, do you want to answer some more questions, or do you want to wrap it up here? But one of the things that we've done is we've introduced a handful of additional questions to get a sense of how people are doing, how people are feeling about their jobs and the industry they work in.
Excellent. And staying with you, Mark, from your perspective, were there any particularly surprising insights that were highlighted as a result of the previous census, and perhaps we're sort of keen to get a better understanding on this time around?
So there were a couple of things that maybe people hadn't necessarily expected, but I think in all cases, when we sort of interrogated them, we found ourselves thinking, that actually sort of makes sense when you think. The first example of those that I'll bring up is that we found, so our estimate is that about 21% of people working in games in the UK are LGBTQ+. And that compares with, it's quite difficult to measure sexuality for a lot of the reasons that you might expect, but that compares with, in the general population, of a figure between about 3 and 7%. So 3 times as many people working in games are LGBTQ+. And there's a lot of possible reasons for this. It might be that people who, when they were growing up, didn't necessarily have ways in which they could feel they could express themselves, found that games were supportive and like a comfortable environment in which they could do that. They got into games and they thought that they might be interested in turning this into a career. We're not sure. That's a possibility, but there's a number of things that it might be. But so that's, one of making sure that we ask sort of sensitive questions about people's sexuality and their gender identity, and particularly thinking about how gender and sexual minorities might be experiencing their work. So that's an example of something that's really interesting from the first census that a lot of people maybe found a bit surprising, that it'll be great to understand in a bit more detail.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think as well, there's, I think areas that there previously wasn't any data on at all, really. So while we sort of 70% male, 28% females, and so on. So that kind of stuff that you kind of the bread and butter of these kind of surveys. But when we're looking at things like the socioeconomic background that people come from, we generally see that people who work in games tend to come from sort of higher income backgrounds than other creative sectors. So the people in the games industry tend to come from more higher income backgrounds than say people in the music industry do. And similarly, we have a higher percentage of people who went to fee-paying schools, for example, about double the national average on that. So it sort of tells the story a little bit. You dig into across a few of the sort of different data points that kind of access into our industry is sort of at a slightly difficult level, perhaps for some people. You need to have come from a certain, you're more likely to get into the industry if you're from a certain kind of background. You've probably been able to afford a computer. You probably had, went to a decent school, kind of thing. And so, from all of that, we're able to unpick a bit more about where actions to improve access into our sector need to focus. It's all very well, having sort of into the career mentoring schemes, but what are we doing to at that sort of the critical point where we're saying actually some people from lower income backgrounds, for example, might not have the same opportunity and access to the industry that other people do. So it gives us a lot of information about where to target efforts going forward.
I think that's
the other thing.
Sorry,
the other thing that I just mentioned on that is this is why it's important to do multiple times. If we just done it in 2019, 2020, we might have thought, okay, we've sort of resolved the question. We know exactly who works in games and what kind of person they are. Because we're doing it, obviously we're 2 years on, we can see how things have changed. That's for people getting into games has got larger. And we can also try to understand, maybe it's that like as time passes, people might have sort of been teenagers in a period where sort of having access to a computer was a little bit more mainstream, whereas people sort of my age and older, it might have been a little bit more unusual. Or alternatively, that might not be what's driving it. It might be something about, access to higher education as a way that people get into games. And so, yeah, because there are these questions about how exactly is this working, that's why it's so important. If you did it last time and you find yourself thinking, well, I told you about myself then, it's really important. Please do tell us again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really it's great from kind of, I guess, from a armchair observer perspective. Like, I think the industry is very self-aware of issues and sort of areas for improvement, so it's really good to actually start getting some robust, reliable data from this kind of effort to really quantify that and get into these issues. And as I understand it, the structure of the census is in such a way that we can draw reasonable comparisons to other sectors. We obviously cover a whole gamut of questions, and we need to reach, it's not just about reaching diverse audiences, because obviously that's going to skew the result. So there's a lot more to this than maybe slinging together a SurveyMonkey form and emailing it to a few people. What is the sort of effort involved in organising something like this? Because I know you've both been working on this for a long time.
Well, first off, I'm very happy to report that we're very lucky to have Mark, who is an expert in all of this, so has been invaluable in helping me and helping the rest of the sector understand exactly what we've got to do. I will let him explain in detail about a lot of those questions, but it absolutely is. We're sort of the key points about doing some work like this is it's all very well to say, okay, we found X percentage of people are like this in the games industry, but without a meaningful comparison, what does that mean? It's all very well to say 28% people this, but is that good or bad? Or how far are we away from a national average, or from, say, an equivalent industry like the music industry or the film industry? So yeah, it's a lot of work in that. But I'll let Mark talk a little bit more about the structure stuff.
Yeah, so in terms of the sort of effort that is involved in putting the thing together, there are sort of two key components. So obviously, people are answering the survey. And there are various channels through which they might have had access to the survey, and we don't know who you are. We keep it all anonymous, and I then undertake a bunch of analysis where so people's responses, the answer that they filled in, I do a bunch of analysis that converts those responses into the report that you might have seen last time around. There'll be something similar coming out in February, and I'm not going to lie, the sort of months between November and January are pretty full on in terms of that work. But then the other side of it is the only reason why any of this works is because people are filling it out. If it was just me being like some guy saying, oh, please could you answer my survey about who works in games, I might get a handful of people sort of taking pity on me. But the reason why this works is because the games industry gets behind it and sort of pushes it through various channels. And the mechanisms through which the games industry gets behind it, I'll let Luke talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is absolutely the key. We need to get the full industry involved in this, and so that we have sort of two main routes by which people can fill out the census. We have a public survey which anyone can access, and is available on our website and all that kind of stuff.
And there's a link to that in the chat, so if anybody is watching in the games industry,
fantastic.
Hit that up and fill it in.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and that's obviously that's a great way to reach people. But there's only a certain section of people that will visit the UKIE website or follow UKIE's Twitter or be on the UK Games Industry Slack or whatever those other channels are. So as Mark said, it's about there are lots of people who work in our sector who aren't in those groups, and So we need to make sure that we're reaching as many people as possible to get to do a full census. We need a really good sample of a cross section of people at a cross section of businesses up and down the country. Large developers, small developers, indies, the major publishers, all of it. So we have another process by which companies that employ sort of around 20 people or more can request a direct link to the census, or a unique link for their business, and which they then distribute out to all of their staff via whatever mechanisms they have, whether they put it on their own internal Slacks or they send mail outs or whatever. And then what we can do is measure the response rates against each of those sort of unique links, so that we understand that we are seeing enough responses from businesses of different sizes and shapes to give us that assurance that we're getting a truly representative section of people that are answering the survey. And I think it's really important to sort of highlight the fact that with a survey like this, when we're doing a census, I think there's a tendency for people who who look like me to go, okay, well, I don't need it to fill in a census. Everything's I'm just a normal straight white dude, right? But actually, it's super important that everyone gets involved. Not only are there loads of questions about loads of different characteristics about people that people would be surprised about, I think, if they've not done it before, and that underpin a lot of other questions about our sector. But it's super important that we hear from everyone. There's lots of data here, and there's really powerful insights that come from this that really help change our sector. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to get involved, and it's super important that the games businesses are involved and help us support this census by getting involved and getting it out to their staff.
And I think that's.
And just to reiterate, if you are that straight white guy thinking, oh well, this isn't really for me, this is really for me, it'll take you 4 minutes. If you answer the second part, it'll take you a total of 5.5. And just to sort of, when those games industry, these sort of studios, organizations are signing up, and it's sort of pushed through the organizations, just as sort of reminder, I don't know who they are. Sometimes people tell me, sometimes people will be like, oh no, I did the census. No, don't tell me. I can't know who anyone is. And so this is the way that we've organized it. So UKIE and Luke specifically never sees any of the individual data. But then I never see any of the identities of the studios who are participating, just so that we can ensure that everyone, their confidentiality is assured.
Yeah, so there's lots of work behind the scenes on the anonymity and privacy and security of this data. We take it all very, very seriously, both on how the data is handled, but also a lot of the processes we have around who has access to what information, and that's to ensure that people can be confident to answer these questions. In a way that the data will be handled responsibly, and that they can be assured that we're taking this incredibly seriously in terms of that side of things.
Excellent. And so then we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you both, and feel free to put you as an individual and you as a organisation representative hat on. From your perspective, what is the ideal outcome that would happen as a result of carrying out this census? Luke, you can kick us off.
So my ideal outcome for the first part is that we get a good response rate of people. Last time we were very fortunate. We had over 3,200 people respond, which is about 20% of the game's workforce. This year we're aiming to double that. So we've got our work cut out in the recruitment phase, which is underway at the moment. So getting people to sign up and getting those responses in, we're doing all right. But there's the survey's live until the 19th of November. So we've got a few weeks to go, so there's plenty of time to get involved. So I really want to see a broader representation of people getting involved and filling it in, and companies signing up, and that kind of thing. So that's my first goal. I think what we want to see really is understand how things have changed since the previous census. Are the findings that we found there still have they changed in a sort of incremental improvement kind of way, or are any of those findings were they perhaps not what we see now, and perhaps there's some stories behind why things might be different. We're also, as we've added in questions about the effects of the pandemic. We have a few other questions on some areas that we didn't cover before, such as things like sort of long-term health conditions, things like whether people need sort of mobility assistance, that kind of stuff. But also all of these new questions on people's experiences in the sector. I think there's going to be a huge amount of insight that comes out of that. Both, we kind of do this thing where we juxtapose similar questions about your own workplaces versus how you see the whole industry. So I think it'd be really interesting to see what comes out of that and how people really feel.
How about yourself, Mark? What's the ideal outcome from your perspective?
So, like, I'm an academic and I'm interested in finding out more about the world. And so, like, my ideal outcome is being able to do a load of interesting analysis that will feed into the eventual report that comes out in February. And one thing that I would say specifically about this is that, like, we would like to be able to make detailed points as far as we can. So, like, we would love to be able to sort of talk in detail about, like, are there certain particular kind of roles in games that people from historically marginalized groups like are more likely to be engaged in and more likely to be thriving in, that kind of thing. Like, if we only have 20 composers, we can't say very confidently this is what it's like being a composer, and at that sort of level we wouldn't report it. But if we have a massive sample size and we get 400 composers, then we start getting a bit more confident in the things that we're saying about the population of composers. And so the thing about like maximizing the number of people that we have who answer the survey means that the level of analysis that we can do gets that much more sophisticated.
Excellent. And John, Luke, did you have something else?
Yeah, well, just in that, exactly where we can, the more people we have, the more detailed that analysis, we can compare, people who, we can compare, people who meet one characteristic and then see how that breaks down across other things. So we might look at, say, for instance, mental health across different role types or across levels of seniority, or where in the country people are and how demographics change by those kind of things. So the more people we can get, the more detail and the more nuance we can uncover. And I think tells us all some, whole new levels of information that we can be confident about. And, I think also help recognize some people in the sector that, it's hard to, we have, very clear rules on, the sort of level of detail we're able to go down to, where we don't want to, identify anyone within that. We wouldn't ever want to say, okay, people that look like this, well, there's one of them, because that would indicate who that person was. So, we have to be very careful about that. But, where we can start to get into sort of more different cross sections of this data, that it's entirely dependent on getting enough people to answer the survey.
Sure. And I think that's like what's mostly, and nobody asked me, but it's my show, so I'm going to weigh in on this as well. The legitimacy of this and all the care and attention you say around kind of like the anonymity and the reach that we can achieve with this is really exciting. From a we can both highlight the positive learnings that we get from this, and we can use that to talk to the media, perhaps, who don't always present the best representation of the industry. Take it to government, who perhaps need some awareness of things like that. We've got some real factual evidence to hold those conversations, but also highlighting the challenging areas as well. Like, we've got the evidence then to say, well, we do need to do some work on this. We can ask for the right help, and for me, that's a really exciting thing that comes out of this. So, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious by this point from what you've said, but just to wrap up then, how can people help? Well,
I mean, get involved. If you go to our website, uki.org.uk/census2022, there's a full set of information there about the census, but two main calls to action. One, if you're an individual or you're a small business, then just sign up immediately, start taking the survey, and take part. It takes, as you said, 6 minutes to answer the whole thing. So the sooner you can do that, the better. But if you're a business of 20 people or more, there's a link there. Fill out a little form, and we'll send you a pack about all the things you need to know about the census, give a bit more information about the data security and all that kind of stuff, some things to help you distribute it to your workforce. But then, again, get on board and get sending the census out to your staff. And that's where we'll really make the difference in terms of reaching the numbers of people we need to.
Fantastic. That's uki.org.uk/census2022. If you're an individual, go on, fill in the form straight away. If you're part of an organisation, you can get a pack to help with that. Or if you think your organisation has already signed up and you haven't seen it, maybe hassle the powers that be that might be holding on to that. Let's get as many responses as we possibly can. Luke and Mark, that's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. I've already waffled on far longer than I'm supposed to have. Mark, you're like, how are we going to talk for 20 minutes about this stuff? Seemingly easily. thank you very much for both of your time, and we'll continue to signpost people to the census, and thanks for all your hard work for it. We're going to jump over to a pre-recorded segment, and then I will be joined by Adam to just wrap up the week's games industry news, so I will speak to you all in a bit. Thanks a lot.
Hey, welcome to another Etch Play video with me, Adam Burt, and him, Ben Joy. And we're playing Last Stop, which is a new narrative-driven game available on Game Pass. We're playing here on the Xbox. And this is one of 3 chapters the game has, or 3 stories, I should say. They're all different, but they kind of link in at times. So you see the kind of classic conversation type stuff. I can choose what my guy's going to say. I'm playing as this man here. His name is John.
Give me your arm.
And we've just bumped into this stranger. Me and my neighbour have bumped into this man on the London Underground. And now he's touching us. And things are glowing. There's paranormal stuff happening, Ben.
Dun dun.
Where did he go?
What the hell just happened? Sorry, mate. Gotta go.
Jack is not interested in talking about the man who just glowed green and vanished in front of us. He's busy. He's got places to be.
He runs weird.
He does run weird. That's the jog of a man who's late, coming off the Piccadilly line.
And is desperate for the toilet. He probably wanted to talk about it, he's just like, I haven't got the time for this.
So the game's, how do I describe it? It's quite sedate, like a lot of it is just, you're just living the lives of these characters until weird stuff starts happening.
Well, sorry, before weird stuff starts happening.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't that weird in the grand scheme of things. That was just a man who grabbed your wrist and then vanished.
Yeah.
But like this, for example, this is just us talking to a friend from work.
Okay.
Finally.
Sounds like she had a good evening.
Go well.
Can't complain. So are you going to that drink?
Ben's downloaded the game already.
How do I play as that character?
Please say you'll come out. You're the only one I can talk to.
We've got some Londoners, we've got some Brummies in this game. Where are the Northerners?
They're probably there somewhere.
Oh well, you will be missed.
The game has got like a pretty accurate London vibe. You know, you've got the underground, there's lots of... All the environments are quite linear, I'd say. Like, usually you start in one place and you walk to another, and there's conversations that happen during, but it's still quite impressive. The game's got a sort of unique style to it, I guess, as well.
Morning, or should I say afternoon?
Oh, this guy is our...
Classic
9:02
joke.
by my watch. Synced to Big Ben.
You know, he's the stereotypical douchebag boss.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your boss, Ben?
Don't forget who's in charge around here.
I love my boss. He's the best ever.
Now all I can think about is Shaz in handcuffs.
Do you even do any work round here?
If you knew the pressure I'm under to hit the new targets, the fact I'm keeping it together is a miracle.
But I like Clive.
Well, perhaps you need a holiday. Oh, he's piped up, hasn't he? You better wind your neck in. Don't forget you're on report for all those days off.
Yeah.
I feel like this game is not going to translate that well outside of Britain. This is such British dialogue.
It's classic British
Oh,
experience.
geezer, wind your neck in, lad.
So here I can press A to type my work. Oh, and now I'm stamping letters. You know, thrilling video game action in first person.
Ooh, what's this? Oh, we don't get to know it. Do you think that was intentional? It was a donut followed by Mr. Baker?
Can you use the photocopier?
Oh, come on.
And we do this for 4 hours until lunchtime.
Yeah. Welcome to our 4-hour live stream
You bastard!
of the photocopy.
Wow, he's a very angry man.
Photocopiers make people angry.
It's true, they do.
The printer doesn't work. Again.
Thanks.
It's not her fault, mate.
She's a robot. It's like an automated system.
It's definitely not her fault.
Supervisor. Supervisor. Supervisor.
I'll put you through to one of our support team advisors.
This guy looks like Ian Gomez.
We are currently
Who's Ian
experiencing a
Gomez?
high number of calls
He plays Andy in Cougar Town.
64. Please hold.
I didn't actually watch that much of Cougar Town. I watched the first couple of seasons when it came out, but I fell out of it after that. I didn't see it all the way through.
This isn't a video about Cougar Town.
You asked who Ian Gomez was, and that's the only thing I can
why
think
did you
of
bring
that he
Ian
was in.
Gomez to the table?
Because he looks like him.
You know who this guy looks like? A guy from a TV show that nobody watching will have watched. Hearts in the chat if you love Cougar Town.
Some people would have liked Cougar Town.
No. When I get back to my desk then.
What about Molly?
Oh yeah, I've got a daughter called Molly, by the way.
Oh.
I skipped that bit.
Right. Well, if you're sure.
Well done, you deadbeat dad.
See you tomorrow, Shaz. And remember, it's a school night.
Welcome to Bad Dad Simulator.
Never sent an email, did you? Shit rolls downhill, mate.
Now I get to walk home late at night in the dark. It's quite a relaxing game, I think. Like, it's just, you know, a lot of it you're just kind of strolling around, having conversations. It's not too stressful.
I mean, now it is. All the trains are delayed.
That's
John's
stressful
having a pretty
It's stressful
bad
for
day.
the character, it's not stressful for me. I don't care if you have to go on the bus.
Wow. Talk about not connecting with the character. You are John. I feel sorry for him. He feels like he's had a pretty crappy day.
Yeah. He will have forgotten all about the man who touched him in the underground and then he vanished.
Sounded wrong. And I know what you mean about it being quite relaxing. The music is quite relaxing. Oh,
And it's got
no.
a sort
Getting
of like
worse.
sedate pace.
Yeah. Stairmaster in it. So he picks up the energy for his daughter.
Dad!
Oh. Nope.
You'd be wrong.
Come on, John. Leave it at work.
Dig deep.
Oh, shit.
I knew you were going to pick chicken dip.
You forgot dinner, didn't you?
I forgot to get dinner. She asked me this morning.
I'll throw some things together.
Is this actually Bad
There's some
Dad
jelly in
Simulator?
the fridge.
I mean, I didn't get a chance. Like, it wasn't like the game didn't give me the option to be a good dad.
So much for healthy eating. Who am I to complain?
Just gonna have a little sleep. It's been a long day. Oh,
Yeah.
Just walked into the wall. That's how tired he is. Sweet dreams, John.
I don't think he's going to have a good dream.
Means you have a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's the man from the underground.
Dun, 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 dun. We're gonna Freaky Friday this shit.
We are Freaky Friday.
Molly, I'm sorry. I think I overslept again.
Don't know about you. I feel like I would immediately notice that I wasn't in my body.
Yeah.
Molly?
Or
Molly, are you
my
here?
room.
What the hell is all this stuff? Where the hell
And
am
you-
I?
And he sounds different.
What's up with my voice?
There you go. He's finally got it.
Weird.
Has he not literally like just looked down?
This is a nice apartment, to be fair. He should stay in this
Yeah.
body.
Yeah, this guy has definitely got the better end of the stick.
Walk through here. Nice bathroom too. Good tiling. We've swapped bodies.
I'm mad that it's taken him this long to notice.
That's the end of chapter 1 of the first of 3 stories, and you see there's 2 others here that we could play. We're going to throw it back to the studio though. See you next time. Bye.
So, welcome, Adam, and thank you, Adam. Thanks for providing us the entertaining playthrough, and also for joining me for a little bit of games industry news. How are you doing?
That's quite all right. I'm doing well. I'm ready to be your news correspondent, bringing you stories from the world of games and sharing them. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. As you probably tell, a little bit flustered. I was in a meeting before we started the show. Kept it to the wire.
I know. What are you like?
I can only apologise.
Okay. Sometimes the show is rough and ready, and that's the way the fans like it.
We're authentic. That's how it goes.
Exactly.
But Luke and Mark were brilliant. Great guests. I could have spoke to them for an hour on the census and data.
Yeah.
And...
For a second there, I thought you were gonna.
Yeah, I do try. So yeah, we're going to talk about some news. Is that right?
Yes, I'm going to give you a run through of some of the biggest stories in games from this week, and we're starting with Star Wars and Quantic Dream. So, this is the news story that, fresh off of last week's announcement that Aspyr are remaking Knights of the Old Republic, we've got rumours of another Star Wars game. So, regular viewers may remember that recently, LucasArts, who own the franchise, recently became open to working with other studios after a long period of exclusivity with Electronic Arts, or EA, as you may know them. So they've started working with companies like Massive, who developed The Division on a secret Star Wars title, and we've heard there are other things in the works as well. And now it sounds like one of those titles, and one of those studios rather, might be Quantic Dream, who are the developers of Detroit Become Human, Beyond Two Souls, and various other narrative-driven games. So reports are suggesting that the developers are 18 months into production on a secret Star Wars title. And obviously this has got fans excited or intrigued, I guess is maybe a better word. Quantic Dream have a very specific style of narrative-driven, walk and talk and choose conversation paths kind of game. That's what their bread and butter is. And Star Wars obviously has a lot of stories to tell, so this could be a good partnership. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think it's great. I seem to remember I didn't actually play Detroit Become Human, but I thought it looked stunning, and I think it was fairly well received. Did you play it at all?
Yes, actually, I think it's probably one of their better games. I think Quantic Dream, they're a weird studio. There'll be people at home who hate Quantic Dream, and I get it. I think that they are. When they first came on the scene, they were pioneers of doing narrative-driven video games, and I think now the appetite has grown for narrative-driven games, but also maybe for those narratives to be maybe a little bit better written, a little bit more grown up, a little bit more thoughtful. So, the sort of stuff that they were getting away with in 2005, I still think is interesting, but maybe they need to take a big step, and this is a good chance for them to, partner with one of the biggest franchises in the world, if not the biggest. And obviously Disney will have tight reins on the story, so they won't be able to go too crazy with it. But it gives them a good playground, doesn't it? Like, it gives them a lot of scope to do something amazing in a universe that people already love, potentially with characters people already love as well, which might be good for them. So yeah, exciting times for Star Wars fans and for Quantic Dream fans. All 5 of them. Our next news story is about Halo Infinite, and you may remember this game is coming out eventually this year. They started doing multiplayer tests using the public a little while ago. We now know that the next 2 weekends, so this weekend and the following weekend, are both going to be tests as well. So you've already would have been emailed if you're part of this. I did get an email, I'm happy to say. If you haven't got an email, sorry, you probably missed out this time. But this weekend, so the 23rd to the 26th, they're testing 4v4 Slayer. And then September the 3rd to October the 3rd, they're testing Big Team Battle. The beta will only be available for a set period of hours on each day, and they've got a quote about this that I can read to you verbatim. Matchmaking will only be up for a set amount of time each day in order to help us test our servers against the highest concurrency possible. While this does mean shorter time for players to go hands-on, it's critical to our primary goal of ensuring that our online services are ready for launch. So obviously expecting a lot of traffic, a Halo game on day one. They've got to try and test for that as best they can. Good luck to them. So those set hours they're talking about there in the UK is going to be 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then again from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. if you're a night owl here in the UK on the Friday and Saturday, Sunday of both of those weekends. So if you have an email, congratulations, and maybe I'll see you in there. If you don't have an email, I'm sure you'll be able to watch some on Twitch, and maybe we'll do some footage as well for the show when we get in there. But yeah,
Nice.
New steps for Halo.
And where's, on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your hype-ometer at for new Halo? Because you're a big fan of the franchise, but kind of went off it a little bit for kind of maybe 4 and 5. Where are you at now?
It's probably about an 8 out of 10, I guess. Like it does look good. I mean, the reports from the last test we reported on the show actually really positive. The impressions were overwhelmingly positive actually about that test. This test will include big team battle, which is one of my favorite ways to play Halo. So I think that'll be a real test. Like, have they captured the real joy of a 16-player, all vehicles turned on, chaotic, battlefield style Halo match? So we'll see. But yeah, I think I'm tentatively excited.
Nice.
I am worried that it keeps getting delayed.
Well, it's better that it's delayed and done right than rushed and disappointing. And for anybody that isn't familiar, 8 out of 10 for Adam is a very excited boy. He's takes a lot to raise an eyebrow from you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so.
I'm extremely pessimistic about games. I don't know why I have this job. Speaking of being pessimistic, we've been talking on the show for a while about Twitch and their reluctance to change in reaction to DMCA takedowns, a wave of DMCA takedowns, really, that have swept across the site and been really frustrating for creators who either feel like they're being unfairly victimized by the system, or they just don't feel like the balance is right in terms of the things they're getting flagged for, or the opportunities they have to address or recourse against some of these takedowns that their channels are receiving. So Twitch is now trying. They're attempting to mend fences, and they have announced a new agreement with the National Music Publishers Association, the NMPA. Now, we don't have many details yet, but the agreement says that they plan to build, and this is a direct quote, a productive partnership between the service and music publishers and through a year of conflict over music rights. So previously, and we've been victim of this at times, if you play copyrighted music on Twitch, even for a legitimate reason or a reason that you feel is legitimate, you're very likely to get silenced, likely to have that video deleted. YouTube usually has a little bit more nuance where they'll maybe divert your income for that video to a third-party publisher who owns some of the music or owns some of the video that you're playing, which probably feels a little bit fairer and allows you that chance to be like, to address it, to say, I disagree with you and dispute where the money's going. It sounds like Twitch is moving in that direction. They're yet to actually launch any of this stuff. It's just a lot of noise at the minute about the new deal and hopefully what this means for streamers. So yeah, the tangible bit, if you're looking for a takeaway as a streamer or someone who enjoys streams, is that hopefully there's going to be a more forgiving reporting process. So publishers under this deal will be able to report things to Twitch and say, these guys use my music. But rather than being an instant takedown, instant deletion, instant strike on your account, it's going to maybe be more of a discussion of like, hey, this person thinks they deserve any revenue you're getting from this. Is that accurate? Is that fair? So yeah, Dan, you once accidentally streamed a copyrighted song on our stream and got your video taken down. This would maybe have been good for you if you'd done it a few months later.
Yeah, I mean, totally stand by. It was not my fault, but yeah, no, it does. It easily happens. There's lots of automated tracking around kind of discovering these kinds of things. It's been a long ongoing dialogue between Twitch and the creator audience, the viewer audience, and supposedly the music industry. I mean, yeah, it's definitely like Twitch has got such a significant audience and is such a significant cultural part of the video games industry. But I just feel the pace has just not been there. And we've got players like YouTube, Facebook Gaming, and YouTube especially really ramping up their kind of presence and they're starting from a long way behind, but they're YouTube and they know how to curate and surface content, and they have the deep pockets. This is an Amazon versus Google situation. I really just think Twitch needs to not just keep. It's great. It's I don't know. It's like you said. It's a lot of noise, and the proof of the pudding will still be in the tasting of what actually changes and happens. Yeah. But it's.
I mean, this is Jeff Bezos talking about. Can't he just buy music? The whole concept of music. He can probably afford that, right?
I mean, that's another. I saw some dialogue around this, and it's easy to think, Twitch is supported by Amazon. They're owned by Amazon. They've got deep pockets. They can make big changes. At the end of the day, Amazon didn't get where it is today by suffering, struggling business practices. Like Amazon is just much as they can throw money at it, they can just cut the cord as well. So yeah, it'd be nice to see some resolution and sort of evolution on the problem. I would just solve the problem and move on to evolving the platform would be great.
Yeah, copyright is a tricky thing. Maybe some of those laws weren't necessarily written with streaming in mind, or even the present day in mind.
No, absolutely not.
Our last news story this week, and usually we'd end on Games for Good, but this felt important, so we're ending on this, is that last week we sadly lost Clive Sinclair, a pioneer of gaming and of computing in general. He was 81 years old and sadly passed away at his home in London last Thursday. If you're not aware, Sinclair is best known in gaming as the inventor of the ZX Spectrum, which was a home computer you could buy in like 1982. And at the time, it was just such an economical way to get into computing and served as I mean, Dan, you'll be able to speak this better than I can, but it was such a vibrant platform for developers at the time, and so many developers, both in our industry and across software in general, owe so much to Clive and what he brought to, children and homes everywhere in the 80s. Would you like to say a few words about Clive and what he meant to you in the industry?
Absolutely, and it's certainly not understating it to say like we're here now in some large part because of Clive Sinclair. The first computer I had was a Spectrum 48K. You may have seen the small black keyboard with the rubber keys, and that was kind of my first taste of home-based video gaming, programming. I used to spend hours typing code from magazines and manuals to create really, really awful programs that didn't work if you got one thing wrong. But yeah, it was very much where I cut my teeth. And Clive Sinclair was kind of like one of the ecocentric, crazy people that home computing was just so inaccessible until somebody came along and said, "Oh yeah, I'll make it affordable," exactly as you said, it would have opened the door to so many software developers and video games developers. He had huge influential successes, and this the eccentricity of him. He also had some failures. The Sinclair C5, which I fondly remember because I had a video game called The Revenge of the C5, which was on the Spectrum. So it already
was an electric tricycle, right? So
it was like a sit-in electric bike. I mean, but e-bikes now are all the rage, but this was an electric bike that was hugely impractical. The brakes didn't work and the battery didn't last. But you have to have these people pushing the boundaries to kind of realize where we might go and what these problems might be. But yeah, that was a complete failure. But I do fondly remember the video game. It was already a failure when I had my Spectrum in the 80s, because there was a video game, Revenge of the C5. But yeah, it'd be definitely it's a real shame to have lost such a significant character from the history of the video games industry.
Yeah, and if you're going to be an inventor, they can't all be winners. That's part of the creative process. So yeah, we want to end on that and just say, really thank you, Clive, for everything you did. Like, our industry and our lives would be very different without your imagination and your ingenuity. So cheers from us, even though we never met. Thank you for everything you did. And that's all I wrote. That's all I've got for news. That's me.
Brilliant. Well, have we got any insights on what we're going to be doing next week?
No.
So what we've got is an insight into the way the show seamlessly comes together.
I'm sure next week we will also be very busy, and we will do our very best to make a show as professional as possible.
Like we do all the time.
And we might fall some way short of that bar. But no, I mean, it's, there's always news to talk about. We're going to play some more games. We'll get a video of something up. There's a few games I've been playing recently that I've really loved, and I would love to get some footage on the show. So we'll see if we can make that happen. And yeah, we'll be back with another discussion as well, I'm sure, about something interesting from the world of games. So don't touch that dial, or whatever they say about the internet. Follow us.
Rest assured,
smash that like button.
There will be a show. It will be on Thursday, and it will be at 4 p.m. So be sure to join us and find out, as we will, what we're going to be discussing then. Thanks, everybody, and we will speak to you next week.